Hello everyone. The main focus of today's news revolves around two key words: negotiations and the Strait negotiations. The latest updates show that today, the first day of talks between the United States and Iran, which took place on Saturday, lasted for more than 9 hours of tough back and forth and have now concluded. But this conclusion amounted to nothing. No substantive consensus was reached, nor was there any good news. In other words, the negotiations ended in a deadlock on the very first day. As for the keyword Strait, it's because for the first time since the outbreak of the conflict, we've seen a US warship enter the Strait of Hormuz, and it did so in a very conspicuous manner, making a round trip through the strait. So why did the negotiations reach an impasse? What is the most critical point of disagreement? And what does the entry of the US warship into the strait mean for the overall situation? Its timing is neither early nor late. It happened precisely today. Yesterday, we discussed with everyone the mysterious roles that the Chinese Communist Party has played in the US-Iran negotiations this time, right? Including the possibility that both the United States and Iran are using these talks to accelerate their own military deployments in preparation for a potential next phase of conflict. No one is feeling particularly optimistic about this. You can see that the US fleet of large transport aircraft is still flying back and forth intensely, constantly transporting supplies. Meanwhile, on the Iranian side, the media has revealed that they intend to receive a batch of secret military aid provided by the Chinese Communist Party. This time, the military aid is not dual use or some kind of semi-finished products or raw materials, but actual weapons, a large batch of shoulder-fired missiles. Don't think that shoulder-fired missiles, also known as man-portable missiles, are insignificant. They're called that because a single person can carry and launch them. Some might say these things are very simple, not some big impressive weapon, but don't underestimate them. Just a few days ago, the world was shocked when that F-105E was shot down during a rescue mission by the US military. It was brought down by a shoulder-fired missile, so Iran has clearly tasted the benefits. The Chinese Communist Party might also be taking this opportunity to test its own weapons. Today is April 11th Eastern Time. I am Tang Jinyuan. Welcome to our program, Jinyuan Talks. We also warmly invite everyone to subscribe to our channel and join us in uncovering the truth behind the news with an objective perspective, logic, and common sense. Let's start by talking about the negotiations, shall we? Let's get right to the topic. This time, there were actually 3 representatives from the Iranian side. There are 2 people that everyone is already very familiar with, right? The lead negotiator is Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Iran's parliament, who is responsible for the overall direction of the negotiations. Then there's another one, the Foreign Minister Araghchi, whom everyone also knows well, because he has dealt with Western countries so many times and has extremely rich experience. He is absolutely indispensable. There is also one person whom most people are not very familiar with. His name is Ali Bagheri Khani. He is a hardline negotiator, right? His position is the deputy chairman of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. What does he do? He mainly participates in nuclear negotiations, as he seems to be a nuclear expert and has very rich experience in nuclear negotiations. Actually, on the Iranian side, these are the 3 people. On the American side, there are also 3, which everyone already knows, so I won't repeat them. So, according to reports from Iranian media, this time the Iranian delegation sent to the talks. Don't think there are only these 3 people. The delegation actually has more than 70 members in total. In addition to these 3 main negotiators, there are also dozens of others who belong to various technical committees in the fields of economics, security, politics, and so on, right? In other words, this time Iran is, well, basically mobilizing all its resources. This is a large-scale, comprehensive negotiation with the United States. In fact, it also reflects from another perspective that the power structure of the Iranian authorities is currently in a state of chaos. In other words, there are too many authorities making decisions, and there isn't a unified, strong leader. So, for many matters, many departments feel that these issues concern their own interests. Okay, so they also want to get involved, right? As a result, it's very difficult to form a unified opinion. As for Gorbachev, he was more like a convener. Strictly speaking, he wasn't the kind of leader with absolute authority. That's very obvious. The general overview of these negotiations is as follows. Actually, the negotiations involved 3 parties sitting together at the table. In addition to the United States and Iran, there was also Pakistan. Pakistan acted as the intermediary, and their chief of army staff attended the talks. As for this round of negotiations, we actually mentioned it to everyone yesterday. I said that the media had made predictions, also based on relevant information, saying that it would be indirect, with both sides not meeting face-to-face and communicating through the intermediary. However, today, at least starting early in the morning, the negotiations began, and it appears that the US and Iran sat down together for what is likely the first direct face-to-face talks in nearly half a century. The first round of talks lasted for only about 2 hours. After that, they moved on to a break and working lunch and so on. And Iran's Tasnim news agency, which is its official news agency, mentioned one point after the talks, saying that the US-Iran negotiations might be extended by a day. Sure enough, after today's Saturday talks, after this first round ended, it has now become quite clear that both sides will hold another round of talks tomorrow. This second round, which will take place on Sunday, is likely to be the final round. Because nothing was achieved on the first day. However, both sides probably feel that there are still things left unsaid, whether or not an agreement can be reached, right? So everything that needs to be said should be said, and everything that needs to be discussed should be fully discussed. So what exactly was the situation in today's negotiations? According to the Financial Times, in their latest report today, they cited two sources familiar with the negotiations, saying that the main issue between the US and Iran and Pakistan was the control over the Strait of Hormuz. The negotiations have reached an impasse on this issue. One of the informed sources stated that Iran insists on retaining control over the Strait of Hormuz, and that they have the right to charge tolls to ships passing through, essentially collecting passage fees. This person also said that despite the fact that US Vice President Vance and Iran's, that is Ghalibaf, held high-level talks, and it said that the two even shook hands, which is unprecedented, this was the first time in nearly half a century that senior leaders from both the US and Iran met for negotiations and actually shook hands. However, the Iranian negotiators still refuse to accept the joint control proposal. Of course, what this probably means is that the US side suggested that they jointly control and collect fees together. This was something that Trump had previously hinted at, right? But even so, Iran rejected even this proposal. They insisted on having sole control over the entire strait. Then, according to insiders at the time, even when the negotiators were supposed to have a working dinner and on their local Saturday night, now for us it was already early Sunday morning because of the time difference, they still wouldn't budge. They are 9 hours ahead of Eastern Time in the US, so they were having technical discussions. What do so-called technical discussions mean? Mainly, it refers to issues that are not so sharply confrontational, such as whether some funds could be unfrozen or whether certain sanctions could be slightly relaxed, and so on. These are probably the main topics being referred to. Then, I also saw that there is some so-called unofficial information about the negotiations that has now been leaked. I'll share it with everyone first. Since it's unofficial, it may not be entirely accurate, right? But at times like this, since both sides haven't finished the talks yet and there will be more discussions tomorrow, so at the moment, there is nothing official that has been formally released. As for the unofficial information, here's what's been mentioned. First, there is a journalist. A journalist named Gabriel came forward and shared what he knew, saying that the most difficult issue remains the Strait of Hormuz. He also mentioned that both sides are still negotiating on issues such as humanitarian reconstruction, the unfreezing of funds, and so on. There is a certain degree of consensus on these issues, but when it comes to the core issue of the Strait of Hormuz and several other major issues, no consensus has been reached at all. Now, if you think about what those other major issues are, they definitely include things like the nuclear program, the missile program, and also the issue of proxies, among others. All of these are probably included. Then Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency came out and directly posted a statement. They said that the lack of progress in the negotiations was not due to a lack of sincerity on their part, but rather because the demands from the American side were excessive. They directly used the phrase that the United States was employing a so-called maximum negotiation strategy. What does that mean? It means that the United States has made almost no concessions. They said that Vance seemed to be acting particularly tough. To put it simply, the US wants everything. They insist that all the terms must be in accordance with their demands. The US itself has made almost no concessions in reaching an agreement. So Iran feels, what's the point of negotiating then? Negotiation means both sides have to make some concessions and compromises, right? But this has turned into a one-sided notification, hasn't it? Then they put pressure on us demanding that we accept it, right? This is basically the same as surrendering. Maybe I think everyone, all of you, probably have an idea in your minds that given how things have gone so far, Iran, in terms of military strength, should have surrendered a long time ago. They're already at the point where they can't fight anymore, right? But Iran itself doesn't see it as surrendering. On the contrary, they believe, look at how we're holding on to that strait and making things really difficult for the United States, right? They're even being forced to sit down and negotiate with us, aren't they? These are equal negotiations. He doesn't think he's surrendering, nor does he believe he needs to surrender. He even thinks he still has the upper hand. That's his mindset. So with this kind of cognitive gap, it's very hard to reconcile things. And then there's also some unofficial news mentioning that the United States is insisting very strongly, absolutely with no room for negotiation, that Iran must get rid of its more than 400 kilograms of enriched uranium. Moreover, in the future, there must be zero enrichment of uranium. No further involvement with this at all will be allowed. At the same time, the United States must have complete control over this strait. That's another point. This unofficial information from one side, of course, is absolutely impossible for Iran to accept. Moreover, Iran feels that conversely, even the request we made regarding Hezbollah, right, just asking for a ceasefire in Lebanon, you couldn't even manage that. So why should we be expected to comply with your demands? And then this information, this news was released through channels that are relatively pro-Iran, saying that Iran... Now, on the contrary, the Iranian delegation is not in a hurry at all. Why aren't they anxious? They feel that, after all, the Strait is in our hands. At worst, if the negotiations don't work out, then so be it. For now, we'll just keep the Strait blocked and see who gets anxious first. This is Iran's biggest bargaining chip. So basically, that's the general overview of today's negotiations. Now, before we get into the negotiations, I want to share some background information with everyone. Actually, both the US and Iran have been very firm about emphasizing their own red lines. As for Iran's red lines, they're quite straightforward. From what I've seen, there are only two versions. One version says that before the negotiations even began, Iran put forward 4 non-negotiable conditions. So what are these 4 conditions? The first is that Iran must maintain absolute sovereignty and control over the Strait of Hormuz. This is non-negotiable. It's not even up for discussion. The second is that there must be full compensation for the losses caused by the war. The third is the unconditional release of all Iranian assets that have been frozen. The fourth is that there must be a sustained and genuine ceasefire throughout the entire region, which actually includes groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and so on, right? There can be no more fighting. This is the first version. The second version says that Iran actually put forward 2 red lines. The first is that Iran must insist on recognition of its control over the Strait, which is the same as before. The other is to facilitate a ceasefire in Lebanon. Regardless of whether it's 2 conditions or 4, you can see that for the United States, these are simply impossible to accept. Meanwhile, there's another piece of news that many of you may have seen today. A senior Iranian source gave an exclusive tip to Reuters, saying that before the negotiations even began, the United States had already unfrozen funds in Qatar. A portion of it? The amount of Iranian assets that were frozen is roughly between 6 to 7 billion US dollars. Moreover, this source also welcomed this move by the United States, saying, "See, isn't this the US admitting defeat?" The United States proposed to first unfreeze a portion of our funds to show their sincerity. Of course, we would be very welcoming of that and so on. However, this claim was immediately and strongly denied by US officials, who said it was nothing but fake news. Of course, later on, after I checked with multiple sources, it seems that the US government did have internal discussions about this idea, about whether or not to unfreeze the funds, since it's only a few $1 billion, not a huge amount, just a gesture. But there were discussions. However, it was not implemented, but the Iranian side might have taken it as real and reported it as such, so that's the whole story. Of course, Iran has its red lines, and so does the United States. What is the US red line? I saw a report from a source. The source is a journalist who posted on X saying that during Vance's meeting with Pakistani Prime Minister Sharif, Vance mentioned that the red line he set was extremely tough and uncompromising. Especially 2 major red lines. The first is that there will be 0 unfreezing of funds. According to Vance, not a single cent of Iranian assets will be unfrozen until all of the United States objectives are fully achieved. Very tough. The second is that Iran must immediately open the Strait and maintain completely free passage. This is unconditional and must be done. If this cannot be achieved, then there is nothing further to discuss. So this is what I see as the red lines set by the United States, which have also been revealed through unofficial channels. Moreover, according to a report by the Washington Post yesterday, as part of the negotiations, the US has also made a special demand requiring Iran to release at least 4 American citizens currently detained by them. Of course, the report also mentioned, he said, they are currently unclear about how important this demand for the release of hostages is within the negotiations or how much weight it actually carries. Because many people speculate that if the negotiations do not go smoothly, then the issue of hostages will certainly become secondary. There are likely to be topics even more important than these 4 hostages, right? For example, the nuclear program. Things like the missile program, especially issues surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, still haven't been clearly discussed. So this could end up becoming a secondary issue. But regardless, this is the first time we've seen the US put forward a demand that Iran must release the American hostages it is holding. This is a condition set by the US. So looking at the overall situation right now, the Strait remains the top priority in the entire negotiation because today's hottest news is about this. Today, the US military officially entered the Strait for navigation. This news has changed at least 3 times in a single day, 3 updates in one day. Both the US and Iran are waging an intense information war. So, what's really going on? The earliest report today came from this media outlet's news website. They reported that several US Navy vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz today. However, soon after, Iran's national television, as well as a Pakistani source, came out to deny it, saying that no US military vessels had passed through the Strait and that these reports were false and fabricated. Moreover, Iranian media also issued a warning stating that if any US warship dares to attempt to cross the strait, it will be targeted and attacked by US within 30 minutes, and so on. Furthermore, Iran's national television also released a report, making it sound very serious, claiming that there was a US warship in the Strait of Hormuz that tried to pass through. After receiving our stern warning, they got scared. The American imperialists tucked their tails and ran away, immediately turning back, and so on. Of course, regarding this report, they completely disagreed with Iran's claims. According to information they received from senior US officials, the US warship did indeed pass through the strait, and at no point during the entire process did it receive any so-called warnings or threats from Iran. Then, the second round of reports came from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal published a report today, citing as many as 3 US officials confirming that at least 2 US Navy-guided missile destroyers successfully passed through the strait. This operation was described as a freedom of navigation mission. Unexpectedly, just a few minutes after this report was released, a senior Iranian military officer immediately appeared on Iran's national television to once again deny that any US vessels had crossed through their waters. This strait belongs to Iran. Such a claim is pure nonsense. However, according to the Wall Street Journal report, they even mentioned the names, saying that one of the guided missile destroyers is called the USS Michael Murphy. As you can see, the ship in the photo is exactly this guided missile destroyer. And then an American senior official also stated that these 2 warships crossed the Strait of Hormuz from east to west, entered the Gulf, then turned around and returned, exiting again from west to east. In other words, they made a complete round trip. What is the purpose of this approach? It's very simple. It's to show the whole world and at the same time warn Iran that this strait is international waters and is completely open to free navigation. It's not your private backyard. That's what it means. Then finally, as I said, it happened 3 times in one day. Later on, today, probably around noon to afternoon, the US Central Command, which is an official announcement, formally released a statement saying that the US military has already begun preparations for mine-clearing operations in the Strait of Hormuz. At that time, they said 2 US Navy-guided missile destroyers carried out this operation. One is the USS Frankie Peterson Jr., and the other is the USS Michael Murphy. So it seems that the Wall Street Journal's report was quite accurate. Moreover, they also mentioned that in the Arabian Sea, in the Arabian Gulf, passing through the Strait of Hormuz is just one part of a much larger mission for the US military. There may be even more such operations. He mentioned that the main purpose of this passage this time is to completely clear the mines previously laid by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in the strait. Then right after that, we saw that Trump himself actually posted on social media. The main point was that he said, we have now started clearing the Strait of Hormuz, removing all those mines and so on. He also said that Iran's 28 mine-laying boats have all been sunk and are now lying on the seabed. Not only that, but when Trump was interviewed by reporters, he also revealed that the United States is currently transporting mine-sweeping equipment to clear the mines in the strait. So when a reporter asked, saying, hey, yesterday we saw reports from American media saying that Iran laid a lot of mines, but even they themselves don't know where those mines are now. They have no idea about their locations at all. He then asked whether the media report that broke the news was true. Trump replied, I don't know, but he said, but we know where those mines are. He said, we have the most advanced mine-sweeping equipment in the world, and we know this, so we're just transporting this equipment to the site, and so on. So what does it mean if you want to clear mines in the strait? If you clear the mines, it means you want to take back control, right? Sooner or later, this will definitely lead to a confrontation with Iran over control. Of course, we should first share some background with everyone. When Trump mentioned earlier that a reporter asked him, saying that there were media reports claiming Iran had laid a lot of mines in the water and that even they themselves didn't know where they were, this actually comes from American media reports, which say that Iran itself can no longer locate them. They laid a lot of naval mines in these waterways for 2 reasons. First, when the Iranian military was laying these mines, as you can imagine, they were extremely unprofessional and careless. They would just throw them in wherever and not bother with any proper marking or recording of the locations. Second, many of these naval mines are themselves prone to drifting, carried along by the tides and currents. Because they drift, over time you have no idea where they might end up, which creates a potential hidden danger. Moreover, the report also pointed out that both the United States and Iran actually have rather limited capabilities when it comes to clearing naval mines, especially since some naval mines drift with the current and can float anywhere. So whether it's actually possible to ensure that all these mines are completely cleared is still unclear at this point, and so on. So what exactly is the current situation in the Strait right now before we started this live broadcast with everyone? I checked, and today Reuters released an exclusive report. They said that according to shipping data, at least 3 supertankers passed through the Strait of Hormuz today. This probably means that since both sides began the ceasefire, since the temporary truce and the start of negotiations, these are the first batch of tankers able to leave the Gulf. These are genuine supertankers, and these tankers are, one of them is flying the Liberian flag. The other 2 are both flying the Chinese Communist Party's 5-star flag. They are both Chinese ships, specifically from COSCO. Is it Chinook or COSCO? It might be COSCO, China COSCO Shipping, right? So it probably belongs to that company. Of course, there's no doubt that these 3 ships are all following the so-called safe route designated by Iran. To put it bluntly, they only set out after paying a toll, but it's just 3 ships, like a drop in the bucket. In other words, if you look at the Strait, it's still effectively under blockade. Only if you're a country that's relatively friendly to Iran and you've paid the toll will I let you pass without worry.